I want to start by thanking St. John Antiques for hosting this budget discussion today. My name is Mike Lofton. I am the Chief Financial Officer for the City of Galveston. And I'm here to talk to you about the city budget. The city budget can be a highly technical, rather daunting document to read as a generalist or interested citizen that may not deal with city government every day. My job here today is to describe enough about how to use it that you will either come down to City Hall, talk to us about it, show up at one of our public hearings, or check it out on the web, on our website at www.galvestontx.gov in the financial transparency section, and take advantage of some of the information we've compiled for you. Budgeting is an art and a science. The scientific part of it is the technical aspects, of course, that have to be pulled together to adequately describe what any organization does, much less a city. The art is in summarizing that information in such a way as to make it understandable. There is a difference, and I think many of you know, between data and information. Quantity and quality is always a trade-off, and there are some standards in the budget profession that drive the way most cities do their budget anyway, including the ones that I worked for in my career. And the goal is to make it both understandable and correct, and also highly transparent in terms of all of the city's expenditures and all of its income sources. A major portion of what we do is based on three concepts: planning, management, and control. Planning is the aspect of the budget that deals with the various programs that are highlighted in the way the city operates. At the present time, we are reflecting the City of Galveston's priorities in this respect, with a heavy emphasis in the city budget on public safety and particularly on infrastructure. It does not mean that they operate to the exclusion of other programs. We have some other very important things going on in our recreation area, planning, zoning, code enforcement, but public safety and infrastructure are a key, and you will find information in the budget to that effect. The second major aspect of the budget is management, and that is, how the budget is used by the city manager and the management team of the city to accomplish the goals and objectives that the community and the city council have for us. The control aspect of the budget deals not just with the line items, but to make sure that the policies that are considered at the time the budget is passed are implemented through the administration of the budget throughout the year, and to ensure that there's sufficient transparency so that things like the items that council wants to talk about through its agenda process are effectively presented and discussed. The city has 43 operating funds that are addressed in this budget. Now, you might say that sounds like way too many, but there's a reason for that, and it's based on the significant difference between the private sector and the public sector. Private sector operations, if they're for-profit, are about making a profit, and their accounting and planning and budgeting is very different than the public sector. Public sector, we're all about ensuring compliance with laws that govern the way revenue is supposed to be expended, and that is particular types of revenue. That is the reason we have so many funds. For instance, the grants that we collect and the user fees and contract revenue that we get for the Island Transit bus system is captured all in one fund, one special revenue fund. The general fund is the repository for the major taxes, property and sales taxes, franchise taxes, that can be used for more broad purposes. So every one of those 43 funds has to be addressed in the budget. At the same time, we've got now 17 capital funds that basically are proceeds left from bond sales, including the two recent ones we've had in the last year. One for water and sewer, one for streets and drainage that was approved by the City Council this summer after the bond election was approved by the voters in May. And in each of these capital funds, we track cash and the assignment of cash to specific projects as approved by the council. So the daunting task for us as staff is to pull all of that information together in a meaningful way. We hope that we've taken a giant step forward with our transparency efforts this year with the creation of the financial transparency page, and also with the addition in this year's budget of a budget summary section that has one goal in mind, and that is to strip away all of the trappings of the operating fund structure and to present the 43 funds as though they were a single fund funding the city as one major large operation. The summary itself looks at all expenditures and all income, and the significant thing is it eliminates transfers between the various funds that are required to track and record revenue, as I mentioned earlier. For instance, if you start with this summary section, you'll see that we've thought about the economy, the growth of the city in our budgeting and planning. You'll also see that we've taken into account all the city's major revenue sources. Our number one revenue source as of right now is water and sewer customer payments. Totals about $36 million a year. When you look at the water and sewer funds, you can see how they're applied. Also in that revenue summary, you'll see that property tax is our number two revenue source at $34 million. Sales tax is number three, and so forth. Most importantly, when you look at expenses on a citywide basis, the key is always to see how we're dealing with the increase in revenue in a particular year. This year we have three major sources for the entire increase in the budget. We have about an $11 million increase in expenses. $10 million of that finds its origin in three categories: personnel, $6 million, debt service, $3 million, and the increase in our cost of water passed on to us from the Gulf Coast Water Authority of $1 million. This is all addressed in the expense section that details the $6 million personnel increase, which includes hopefully as many as 16 police officers, including 6 that we hope to get through grants, and 10 funded locally, as well as critically needed positions on the civilian side to help with records in the police department, project implementation citywide of our CIP, and what have you. The total budget this year is $230 million. $75 million of that $230 million is our capital budget. Of the $155 that remains, there's about 30 of that comes from our special revenue funds. And special revenue funds are an interesting creature. They exist like the Island Transit Fund because there's been an ordinance or a state law or a federal law passed that governs the use of revenue for specific reasons. After you've looked in the budget summary section to get a feel for sort of the larger picture about where the money comes from and where it goes, then I invite your attention to one of the operating department budgets where we really see what our operational plans look like. The traffic department is on page GF 38 of the operating budget. This presentation is an attempt to show you what their mission is, the accomplishments they've made this year, such as working on restoring and maintaining street lighting on Broadway and I-45 between 6th Street and the Causeway. That's one of their accomplishments. One of their goals for the upcoming year that starts October 1st is to continue implementation of the traffic LED retrofit program in accordance with the city's energy saving goal. So there's some very specific things that each organization is trying to achieve and hopefully has achieved in the previous year that are a part of each department's budget. On the right-hand page or facing page, you see summaries of what they're spending for a 4-column presentation that follows the rest of the budget throughout, not just for expenses but revenues. It shows what they spent last year by category, what their budget was this year, what the estimate is for their spending this year, and what's proposed for next year. Then after that explanation of the changes in the budget is a performance indicators section where we're really trying to ask people to give us a sense of what their workload is, how many calls for service they might have, how many complaints they're answering, how effective they are, how much of the problems that they're addressing are being solved on some basis, how efficient they are on a unit cost basis. That's the kind of information that's in the performance indicators section. Lastly, there's a listing of personnel, and that's the specific budgeted positions, and again it ties back to last year's actual, this year's budget, this year's estimate, and next year's proposed. And really, all of this information is framed in such a way as to help you better understand what's proposed for next year and how the money is going to be used. Let me say one last word about our financial planning process. A lot of times people focus on the annual budget to the exclusion of other important items. We mentioned the capital improvement plan. Long-term financing and planning issues are key in any organization. So what we do is we start each fiscal year with a 5-year long-range financial forecast, and you'll find this on our financial transparency page. The purpose of that forecast is to attempt to say, if nothing else changes, that is, if the economy grows pretty much or changes pretty much to the extent that experts expect at the national level and the regional level, if all legal obligations of the city are met, and if current rates and charges are held constant for a 5-year period, how does that look in our general fund, which is the main fund I talked about, and in major funds that may have an issue that we know needs to be addressed. In most years, we'll not have anywhere near all of the funds in this forecast because it makes no sense to do so. We do include the water and sewer funds because of the very aggressive infrastructure program that's being implemented right now to catch up and do long-needed system replacement and repairs in those cases. As I said, budgeting is an art and not a science. And until you get in and really look at some of the material and read to glean some of what's happening with your money and where it's going, it's hard to describe every aspect of it that's here. But I can tell you that your staff in the budget office in particular, including Debbie Pierce, Carrie Latimer, and Megan Boswell, do their dead level best to present and compile and present the information accurately.